Okay, today is 15th of April 2019. We are in the NUS Medical Dharma Circle gathering, MD6. Okay, so the title of today's sharing is Future of Buddhism. The discussion is very important because it follows up from where you all had previously two talks, right, on Life of the Buddha and History of Buddhism, so it's quite nicely fitting. When you talk about the future of Buddhism, I was kind of smiling at myself. I say I'm actually talking to the future of Buddhism. I mean, you all are the future of Buddhism. But what does that mean? It's very important. What does it mean? You see, religion doesn't come fixed. You know, I mean, yeah, there are teachers, there are books, there are scriptures, traditions. You know, but all the world religions, especially the world religions, they change over time, and Buddhism has gone through amazing changes. Ever since the Buddha passed away, changes already started. Why? Because the non-traditional followers, the newer people, the newer monks, if you like, in other words, not the forest monks, but those who are new, they couldn't accept the Buddha's death. So because they had this difficulty of saying, look, the Buddha, after all, I mean, he's omniscient, I mean, he couldn't die. They had this kind of idea, you see. So from there you have all these new concepts of Buddhahood. So this is one of the big issues, you know, which came up. And this idea is still moving on now. So this is one of the issues of a living religion. Buddhism is a living religion. A living religion changes over time. So you have religion and you have spirituality. So very often these scholars of religion, they distinguish between these two. Religion is what people do with religion, or do with spirituality, if you like. Where spirituality is the spirit, it is what's inside you, what is it that you're looking for, what helps you, what really is ultimately important. And this is something I think is what we would be interested in. See? I mean, are we just going to be followers of a religion, get together, it's a crowd thing, and that's it? On the other hand, there is also, you see the image with the Buddha is always alone under the Bodhi tree. And I love this image. You know, I always tell people, if you have a problem, always remember this Buddha sitting alone under the Bodhi tree. He didn't give up. He had 5 monks. All these 5 monks disagreed with him. He thought they thought that, you know, when he gave up his extreme practices, they thought he was being worldly, and they left him. You know. So I mean, any democratic thinker would say, "Oh, you should have followed the 5, and 5 must be right. You know, you should have given up. If you had given up and followed the 5, there would be no Buddhism today, right?" So you see this lonely figure of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree is a wonderful image to reflect on whenever you're at some crossroad in life. All the important things in your life, you'll be alone. All the decisions you make when you're born, you're alone. When you get married, you're alone with someone else, of course, but both are alone, all right? And when we live this way, we're alone. Any big decisions, you're alone. Your best friends won't be able to help you. And you can't give up. Always think of the Buddha. So this is a beautiful image, you see, of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, all right? So, but then, over time, people begin to see him as no more historical. So he became apotheosized, he became deified, he became a god, right? So you have the historical Buddha, and then you have this Buddha as a kind of godlike figure. And you see this a lot in Mahayana. People actually worship the Buddha. They believe that merely by reciting the name, you know, things happen, right? For example, okay? Yeah. So, of course, these are all part of living religion. You know, people need it. So when people need it, they always invent it, you see. So you have the historical Buddha, right? Now this year I'm 70 years old. I started with Buddhism around mid-teenage, all right? So it's quite a long time. So I've been asking myself lots of questions over these decades, 7 decades more or less. No? So I asked myself, I want to know who really is the Buddha. So I'm very interested to know the historical Buddha. If you study religion very seriously, you find people who stay with the religion for a long time. After a while, they go in the quest of the historical founder, the historical Christ, the historical Muhammad, historical Buddha. Who is he? What did he teach? You see? when you say historical Buddha, we're talking about the Buddha arising amongst human beings. He was human. Because he was human, it's very important. We are human, so we can become Buddha also. Whereas in the God religions, you have God up there and you are down here, and you're always a creature, right? And that's the big difference about Buddhism. So, as far as the historical Buddha is concerned, we have a lot of information nowadays. With the internet and modern research, modern discoveries in Gandhara, for example, they discover all these ancient fragments. They're all broken pieces. You have given them. You look at the broken pieces. How can I ever read these things? So they use a computer to start piecing all these pieces together, and they get this ancient scripture again. So they begin to have a better view, a window into the past, what the ancient scriptures were like. We kind of came closer to the Buddha. But then again, you see a change there. For example, Buddhism in India. You have the historical Buddha. While he was alive, he could he could tell you exactly what is Buddhism, what is not Buddhism, right? Now, once it passes away, you have the Sangha. But even then, you're talking about India 2,500 years ago. It's not like Singapore, We have trains. It's very convenient to go to Malaysia, but there were no trains those days. You travel at the best. It's horses. I suppose it's the fastest you go, but monks don't ride horses, they walk, So you have this distance. So you have bubbles of Buddhist monks all over India, right? By the time Buddha passed away, there were lots of Buddhist monks and nuns. And then Buddhism spread all over the ancient world, right? To Sri Lanka, to Southeast Asia, and also to the West, Arabia. Arabia, we do not know what happened to Buddhism there. Islam took over, so everything is lost. But there was Buddhism there because they preserved some of our ancient stories there, Jataka stories, all right? And then that story went into Europe, to the Middle East, all right? So you see these people, the merchants. The merchants were great, spreaders of Buddhism. They brought Buddhism along with them for their own blessing, okay? And they built all these huge Buddhas in Bamiyan and so on, which was bombed by the Taliban and so on. And then Buddhism went to China, all right? And then there you have another growth going on. Buddhism became Chinese in China. It's a totally new religion, actually, all right? Because the Chinese, the traditional Chinese, actually believe in a soul, which you do not find in early Buddhism. So here you see this future development in the past, okay? This change. So the question we can ask now, what's going to happen to Buddhism? What change is going to take over? Only last week I was imagining, I told myself, what would be the religion of the future be like, the cosmic religion, when we make contact with other alien races, those races you see in Star Wars and Star Trek, huh? I don't know whether you watch those shows or not, these, what they call, the Bajorans and the Klingons and all these people. What kind of religion, what kind of Buddhism will they follow? I don't think that they'll be attracted to a religion that is based in a particular country, let's say Middle East. It's about some earthlings fighting each other. But they're totally different species, So they cannot relate to that kind of religion, right? The Abrahamic religion, for example. Then the Indian religions, other than Buddhism, are also very culture-based, race-based. Chinese religion also race-based. Taoism, Confucianism are not actually religions. Confucianism is more of a social system of hierarchy, social control. Taoism is more of a mystical approach, almost opposite of Confucianism. So they're very Chinese. So this wouldn't work for those aliens, But when you talk about Buddhism, here again, Buddhism is such a big word. So we have to narrow it down to early Buddhism, historical Buddha, early Buddhism. Early Buddhism is very basic. We talk about mental training, about moral virtue, mental training. This probably will interest those aliens because when we talk about meditation, calming the mind, and mental evolution, surely this will interest them. You see. So, in other words, you can see in Buddhism there is this possibility of being a future cosmic religion. So that is one thing, really something to think about. that is becoming even more relevant in the future. That's provided you preserve what the Buddha taught. So this is one of the struggle between the historical Buddha and what people need or want today. So then you have the future Buddha, right? That is another concept which was introduced. In all the Buddhist texts, the future Buddha is only mentioned once in what's called the Chakravarti Sihanada Sutta, the discourse on the lion roar of the wheel turner, or in simple language, this would be the power cry of the emperor. Okay, so this is about some kind of golden age, possible golden age. You have this wonderful king who's very peaceful, a bit like Asoka, if you like. And only this sutta says that, okay, you know, the human lifespan will dwindle after a while, and then there'll be a long 7-day war, and then the human lifespan will again increase over a long, long time, you know, millions of years. And after that, the future Buddha will come. So this is very positive, because if someone were to ask you or tell you or scare you, the world's going to end, you say, oh no, not in Buddhism, you know, because the future Buddha hasn't come, right? Or the world will only end after the next Buddha comes. Because in our world cycle, current world cycle, what's called an eon or kappa in Pali, kalpa in Sanskrit, this, in other words, the life of our universe during this period, when there is this stable state. In early Buddhism, we talk of 4 stages of the universe, all right? In modern terms, I'm using modern terms, okay, it's a Big Bang, and then this Big Bang, according to Buddhism, it takes some time, right? It keeps on expanding. Nothing can exist there except matter. And then it kind of stabilizes. Okay, that's when we exist. And there's this big crunch, slowly closing in, and then something like a black hole, you know. So you have these 4 stages. It's like a pulsating universe. So during the stable state, you have this future Buddha coming, okay? And so the world will only end much, much later after that. So when we talk about the future, in a sense, it's quite positive. We have nothing to worry about for the moment, okay? But remember, when we talk about time, even millions and billions of years, there is still impermanence. So the Buddha always warns us, no matter how long you think of time, things still change. But basically, I'm trying to present to you this future Buddha. It's a kind of myth or story that's only mentioned once. Whereas there are many past Buddhas, right? Now I can't explain why this is the case, you know. But one thing we know where religion is concerned, stories do get added later on. So we can take this as a story, as a myth. Now when I say myth, you should not summarily say, oh, it's just a false story. A myth is not a false story. If you study psychology, mythology is a very important aspect of all the religions. All the world religions succeeded because they have their mythology, their stories, right? Which are more real than the reality we face in our daily lives. Take the Greek mythology, for example. All those stories of those great heroes, they represent our actions that mean something to us, and to us as a community, as a society, as a human race even. So mythology describes all these experiences we go through on a cosmic level. So mythology is very important in that sense. And if you study psychology, you want to understand how people behave, and you have this kind of, they're called archetypes and all these ideas you have about how people behave. There's a pattern. So mythology is a kind of pattern, a story we live and relive. Right? So, and Greek mythology is full of wonderful stories like that, which are very similar to Buddhist mythology because they actually come from the same family of languages and people, the Indo-Aryans. That's another interesting point. So, when you talk about the future Buddha, you can take it as a mythology. In a sense, it's a story. We do not know when he will come in far distant future. But there are people today who sometimes say, oh, you know, the Buddha has already passed away. We can't ask him for help. But we can ask the future Buddha. But there is an error here, because there's no future Buddha, because he's not Buddha yet. He's now, traditionally, he's said to be in Tusita heaven. He's still there enjoying life as a deva, as a divine being. See? So these are things we should know. I mean, even today, you go to some temples, even in China, you have this image. In Korea, you have these images of the future Buddha. Maitreya, in Sanskrit is Maitreya, in Pali is Metteyya, one with lots of metta, loving kindness, And then again, you see this change. In India, the Buddha is represented as a hero, as a kind of he-man, okay? With a V-shaped body, muscular and tough. Because he was a warrior, see? But when the Buddha went to China, he went the other way around. He became like an A-shape. You get a big belly, this laughing Buddha, if there is such a one, I mean, because the Chinese wants happiness, so they created their own Buddha, So there you see this kind of change again. Then you see many future Buddhas on the internet, I posted one recently on my Facebook. You have this Vulcan hairstyle on this Buddha image. He looks like, what's that Vulcan hero, what's his name? Sorry? Spock, yeah. Spock-like figure with a Buddha body. So the face looks like Spock, So this is their vision in the future. You have this logical Vulcan becoming Buddhas, Now I say, wow, this is good, because they're seeing Buddhism in the future followed by beings from other planets, So, again, what's going to happen? We do not really know. Okay? We are living now. We do not know exactly what will happen in the future, but we must be prepared. So that's the future of the Buddha, generally speaking. I'll just give a quick round, and later you ask questions, all right? Now then you have the future of the Dharma. Okay? That is what the Buddha taught. When the Buddha came to this world, he says, I only teach one thing, that is suffering and the ending of suffering. Okay, actually it's two things, but they go together, all right? And then this is elaborated into four. Okay, why does he mention suffering and ending of suffering? Because these two basically summarize what life is about. Suffering here refers to meaning of life. Okay, so when we talk about meaning of life, you have two aspects: definition of suffering, and then the arising or the cause of suffering. This is the meaning of life. So in other words, if you ask what is life, you have to talk about life in this manner. The nature, of course, suffering is a very difficult word, whereas dukkha is more broad. So here you have another problem, because Pali is such a flexible language. It's a beautiful language, especially used to spread early Buddhism. So it is a very contextual language, non-technical, almost poetical, if you like. So you look at the suttas, you should look at the context. One word, it may have a different meaning depending on the context. But it's not difficult as long as you understand the basic teachings. So the Buddha teaches, okay, there is suffering, is the meaning of life, and then there is the ending of suffering, which is the purpose of life. The purpose of life, ending of suffering, is nirvana, and then there is the path. There is the path, there's the way, there's the method. The Buddha just doesn't say life is suffering, it tells you how to get out of it, how to better yourself, right? So this kind of approach, of course, is timeless. This is the kind of religion that doesn't talk about one particular race, a certain god favoring a certain race, or a certain group. In fact, the special thing about Buddhism is that it's based on the value of life. If you look at other religions, what do they focus on? There is the God religion. So to them, God is the most important thing in life. Everything doesn't matter. Now, there are serious problems here, because you put God first, and humans doesn't matter. You see, I have on my brother's side, my only elder brother was converted, and he's a very loving brother, very good to me. He has passed on, but somehow, because of his religion, we can never be close. We are divided by this religion, which is with very different ideals. So because to them God is more important than human relationships, then your family. So this creates great difficulties. See? Whereas if you talk about renunciation, see, in Buddhism, being a monk, you're told that they leave home, or the renunciants leave home. See? But they do not give up the family. See? Of course, sometimes in Chinese we are told what chucha means leave home. Yeah? Here is the concept of the biological family. They leave the biological family for the spiritual family, which is much bigger. So you see that anyone can still approach the monks when they are renounced, and the nuns, you see. And the monks and nuns, in other words, now see the whole world as their family. And so it's not actually giving up father, mother, brother, sisters. They are still father, mother, brother, sisters. But any of you, when you approach the monk, the suttas say, if the girl is a young girl, treat her like your daughter, right? If she's about your age, as a sister. If she's older than you, as your mother. So you see, this kind of, again, this extended family connection is there, right? Although we are talking about monks and nuns, so they don't really give up the family in that sense. They see a bigger picture of familyhood, if you like. So again, in the future, you're going to see other planets coming in, other universes, and so on, you know. So this idea of a kind of universal family is very important. And Buddhism will provide that, not because of a singular God, but because of rebirth, that we can be reborn into any of these beings anywhere in the universe, not just our solar system. It could be any other solar system. And early Buddhism was aware of all this huge cosmic range of systems and planets. It's amazing. You will never see any other cosmic system or cosmology around the same time as early Buddhism, which has such a huge and open idea of the universe. Okay, so these are futuristic aspects of Buddhism which are very helpful in that sense. So this is under the Dharma, right? Then after the Buddha passed away, you see Buddhism becoming a religion. So the Buddha is worshipped, and then not only religion but religions, depending where Buddhism went. When Buddhism went to China, it became Chinese. Went to Sri Lanka, it became Sinhalese, and so on. And of course, when we went to Korea, it became Korean. And then you have, these are imperial systems, so you have another big problem. The emperor started using Buddhism as a means of social control, because people love religion. So the emperor says, okay, I'm your religious leader now. Okay, so this is the Buddhism that you're going to practice. So the emperor has the last say, and that effectively redefines Buddhism. This is what happened during the Kushan period in the northwest India. The Kushans were a kind of migrant tribe. They became very powerful, and they were very creative, and they managed to conquer quite a large chunk of Asia, except in part of India. So this Emperor Kanishka of the Kushans, they adopted all the major religions of the time, the Persian religions and Buddhism. That's when Mahayana arose, because they kind of mix everything up. Like today, you see all those nice religious people lining up and showing the religion is happy and people are happy and safe here. Okay, so you have this Persian religion, Manichaeism, Zoroastrianism, where they talk about light and dark. Okay, or the Ahura Mazda and so on. And this idea was known to the Buddhists in the Kushan Empire. And the Buddhists were very imaginative too. So they said, okay, they have this idea about light. We can use this idea about light. So they invented Amitabha Buddha. Amita means boundless, Abha means light. So that's how this Amitabha Buddha came into being. And then there are many other kinds of Buddha depending on the circumstances. Of course, there are many other interesting developments like this as cultures meet and clash. And then Buddhism went to China. You have another big story there. The Chinese will never accept anything foreign or barbarian. And yet the Chinese could accept Buddhism. This is amazing. This itself is a huge cultural miracle, you know, or anomaly even. that Buddhism made its way to China. First of all, the language is so different. Chinese is pictorial, ideographic. Indian language, Pali, Sanskrit is agglutinative like English. Very different. So the early Chinese really made bad translations of the suttas, and this embarrassed a lot of scholars, and we all know it very well. But then later, about 700 years later, only came the really good translations. Early on, the translations we had to use Taoist terms, but then that Taoist term also smuggled in Taoist ideas, and that's how you find, like even today, Zen Buddhism is basically Taoism in Buddhism. They use Taoist idea about Wu Wei and all this action of non-action. They talk very strange, like Taoist Sun, this saint in the forest. So you see this, as Buddhism moved in time, you see this kind of growth and change as a living religion. Even today, Buddhism is still changing. Buddhism went to Japan. It was a very difficult time. Earthquakes and tsunamis, and Kublai Khan was going to attack Japan, and people were really worried, and there was this famine, really bad time. That's when any kind of religion will help. So there was lots of rivalries of religion, each claiming to save Japan. So you have this, one of them is called Nichiren. He says, okay, you just recite Lotus Sutra name and everything will be all right. In a sense, everything was all right, and all the religious leaders say, look, they all followed me, you see. Everybody was right, everybody was wrong. But this group called the Nichiren, this leader called Nichiren, he was very brave and imaginative, so he became like a hero. And then you have this Buddhism after his name. Whether he intended this or not, we do not know, but you have this Nichiren, this group, who claim he is like Buddha. And they take him as in place of Gautama. So you have a different religion altogether. So you see, when you come to this point, you begin to see, wow, look at Buddhism. It's actually a family of religions. It's not a unified system. So I was a monk for 20 years, up to 40 years old. So those early days, I remember coming here talking about Buddhism from all points of view. I was trying to answer every kind of question that you ask. I see Buddhism was a unified system. After a while, I said, wow, this is difficult, because the Buddha never talked about Kuan Yin, for example. He never talked about Amitabha. So how do I explain all this, So after this long journey, I decided I should come back to early Buddhism, which is much simpler, and there is this focus on the meditation, right? So when you talk about the future of Buddhism, this mind training is going to be very important. You already begin to see the influence of mind training today. Right? You're living in an era where Buddhism has made a very powerful impact. There is what's called the third wave of psychology. The first wave is where they started talking about psychology, William James and company. And then the second wave, they still used the word meditation. And the third wave was up to recent times. They decided to use the word mindfulness. Okay, now they don't use meditation anymore. They say, oh, we can't use it, it's too religious. They use the word mindfulness. Actually, mindfulness is only one aspect of meditation. Okay, but anyway, it's fine with us. So what's happened here is that the psychologists, they found that good as the ideas of people like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, but they're a bit narrow. Okay? When they discovered Buddhism, talking about the nature of the mind, various terms there's so many terms for mind, and various theories, the theories of consciousness, all there in detail. Now I have a big volume, just one book like on consciousness alone, and this is we're talking about early Buddhism. So these psychologists are fascinated because they are trained in mind science, so they know all these terms and ideas. So when they studied the text, they read it in a different way. They said, wow, look at this. This person living 2,500 years ago is describing the mind. And they understood this language better than a traditional Buddhist. This is another challenge which the Buddhists face, right? If you are a specialist in any field, medicine in your case, if you do computer programming too, you find the suttas have a certain computerized algorithm. The way the Buddha repeats the suttas, there's a pattern. The way there is nesting, you have stories within stories within stories, and a certain pattern of repetitions, and what happens in the end, and so on. So if you're a computer programmer, you can map out the different styles the Buddha used. Someone tried to do this, someone called Mark Allen in Australia, but I think a computer programmer who is a really devout Buddhist could do much better. This is something new that has not happened yet, so I'm waiting for this wonderful thing to happen. But psychologists are kind of taking over Buddhism today, and they're using it to help heal people, and you've got literally millions of papers online. You just key in Buddhism, psychology. Wow, the last time I did it, I got 4 million hits, and it's just a lot. So you see, this is, in other words, Buddhism is very relevant to modern learning. You can imagine what will happen in the future then. Of course, it's quite tricky. One of my concerns is, will psychology take over and Buddhism become irrelevant? That's another big question we have to ask. Maybe it might challenge other later Buddhisms, but I think the teaching of the historical Buddha will still be valid, because when you go back to the early teachings, you find the ideas of meditation, terminal and psychology, they're all still very deep, still not fully understood yet, and you need practice to understand what's going on. I mean, just like being a doctor, you can read a book on doctoring, you're still not a doctor, You have to go through all those training, exercise, and cut up cadavers and so on, Then you don't need the books. I mean, you can't be referring to a book when I see you and they say, okay, let me see, what can I do? You know what to do, you see. So a Buddhist practitioner also should be like that. We kind of know what to do. There comes a time when that should be the case. But before that, you have to go back to the ancient texts. So this is something that the suttas are very important, because if you do not have scriptures, then what is it can you know? There's nothing to know. There's no authentic collection of teachings. You see? So you have to go back to the suttas somehow. All the Buddhisms in the world are only there because you have this ancient core of teachings. Right? So even in the future, you still need this ancient core. So what is good today with the computers and internet and social media is that you have access to this ancient core of teachings and many versions. In other words, the Pali version and the English version and so many languages, translated into so many languages. All these are easily available. So here again you see technology helping the spread of Buddhism. Now I don't have to travel so much to give teachings or give Dhamma talks. I sit at home in my computer and I'm in contact with thousands of people all over the world. Some from South America, and from Canada, and from Australia. They're all asking questions and they're all talking suttas. So it's a new way of teaching now. A kind of, I don't know how to describe this, kind of almost cosmic way of communicating, right? So Buddhism is futuristic in that sense. But then you have something else developing here. If you really look around today in Singapore, there is another aspect which we don't talk about, but which is very real, very important. Buddhism as business. This is a big thing. Right? Buddhist books sell very well. Right? Religious ceremonies also sell very well. And you make millions out of this thing. So there's another aspect we have to consider. How right or wrong this is. All right? And what is interesting here is I ask myself, okay, when you talk about Buddhism, money, the world, why can't the Buddhists get together, especially in Singapore, and build a global university of Buddhist studies? You can easily do that. You can easily get the scholars, and Singapore is just the right place for that. So this is the future, not done yet. See? I hope somebody will have the imagination and the funds and the abilities to do this. You have a global university. You see, because other religions are using Singapore as a springboard to evangelize China. You see? So what are we Buddhists doing? Right? So if you run only Buddhist businesses, wow, we're really destroying Buddhism, you know. You are eating, the snake is eating its own tail. So you got to be more imaginative. If you start a kind of global university, you train these teachers and students, and they know Buddhism really thoroughly and true. And you have a formidable force there, because when you understand Buddhism very well, you understand the nature of meditation, you combine Buddhism with psychology and society and so on, and you find Buddhism has a lot to talk about world peace. And there's a lot to do there. So Buddhism has a role in the future here, depending on in your imagination. You are the future Buddhism. Now we come to the Sangha. Now, with the Buddha, you have the Sangha refers to the path, the saints, the streamliners, those who are able to overcome wrong ideas about self, doubts about, the realities, and then being attached to rituals, living a kind of ritual life, because rituals often are signs of a psychological problem. When people keep repeating things, you keep doing things again and again, expecting some other result, right? So if you can overcome these three problems, you become a streamliner. In other words, you have really reached the path to awakening, right? And for me, this is the aim, at least today, as lay Buddhists or as monks, our one aim should at least be to be a streamliner, to attain the path in this life itself. So this is the early teaching. You have the path comprising of the saints, the streamliners, the ones returner, non-returner, and the arhats, right? But then after the Buddha, you find things begin to change. Yes, there is meditation, but then meditation became a ritual. In the later texts, you find there are huge, long names for samadhis, for these meditation states, very long names. But they don't refer to any particular meditation. So much so that a scholar has written a paper entitled State or Statement. State or Statement. In other words, when you meditate, you get into meditative states. But if you talk about the great samadhi of the inconquerable enlightenment that will overcome all defilements, so wow, it doesn't mean anything. It's a nice long name, but it doesn't refer to any meditative state. You see, so this became ritual Buddhism, much later Buddhist. So these are some problems we face. So today you might have someone coming along and tell you, oh, I've discovered, I've seen the Buddha, he's living on those mountains in China, and he starts a new religion. Don't be surprised you have people doing that. And these are things we totally have to avoid, right? So we have to, because religion's like that, people use it, And a lot of Buddhists, I would say a high percentage of religious people, especially including Buddhists, do not know their religion. Religion and Buddhism thrive because people are ignorant. And this is one of the saddest realities that we have to correct. That is why I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to studying the suttas, compiling this complete translation called the Sutta Discovery Series. Some of the books are here. This is, you see, only one chapter, one volume. From these are examples. And by the way, the Sutta Discovery Series is the Sutta translation of the whole Tipitaka, the Sutta Pitaka rather, began here with the Sutta because the NUSBS requested for Sutta class. That was in around 2002, and then we had started having Sutta class. It started here, so this is a historical place, where Buddhism is concerned. All right. So then we're talking about the Sangha here. So you find you have two groups of monks now. The traditional forest monks, you don't see much of them because they're still in the forest meditating, living strict lives. They're actually the real practitioners, because when you go there, you see what they're doing and you can still follow what they're teaching. And then you have those urbanized monks. They're very much like lay people, except they have no hair, or they look like having no hair, and they wear robes, But then there's so many different versions of these monks, and many of them are trying to modernize, trying to change. So it can be quite difficult. For example, one of the latest developments, before that, you know that where the monks are concerned, there are rules. Because the monks are meant to be celibate, they're supposed to be meditating. The idea of being celibate is nothing to do with that sex is evil. Rather, it's the idea that our senses, our five senses, limit our powers to the body. So if you can close your eyes, you calm your body, and then you go into a mental level, you free the mind to experience itself to such a level that it is very happy, very calm, and it experiences a kind of joy beyond the body, a kind of transcorporeal joy, which is so powerful, heavenly joy, if you like, that you find physical pleasures, including sex, is not your cup of tea anymore, because you have this beautiful, fantastic joy. So this is the monastic training that the Buddha offered, that when you go into jhana, you go into deep meditation, you can attain this level. And that will help you to attain the two higher states, the non-returning or arahathood. Okay? So imagine if you have this kind of teaching, and then you have this monk, there's a picture of him, you can see on my Facebook, this monk from Sri Lanka. So we're talking about the future Buddhism. You find that many forms of Buddhism are ethnic. So you have Thai Buddhism, Burmese Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. So they put the race first. So that limits the scope of Buddhism. And now you have Western Buddhism. I suppose we have to think in terms of a global Buddhism. But when you think about global Buddhism, what does it mean? We'll end up with another Buddhism? Global Buddhism has to be early Buddhism. You have to go back to these basic teachings of the Buddha, who really is the Buddha, because the future Buddha will be just like our present Buddha. What kind of Dhamma will he teach? The future Dhamma will also be the same Dhamma that the present Buddha teaches. It's like you have this string of professors. It's going to teach you basically the same thing. You can have another professor and say, oh, I have a new idea of medicine. I'm going to teach you something different. We're going to use Chinese traditional medicine and so on. Then you have, wow, the whole system goes havoc. It won't work anymore. So you need this kind of understanding that you need to go back to your roots. Only then you can see Buddhism becoming cosmic, because the roots are there. Because you have no roots, then the tree will die. So from there, I hope I've given you some idea on the difficulties we can face with the future. And the challenges are here now, and you're going to be the future. So what do you think about all these things I've said? You can either make statements or you can ask questions. Okay? Yeah.
You mentioned cosmic. What are you referring to?
When I say cosmic, means the whole universe, the knowable universe that where living beings contact each other. I'm being a bit imaginative in the future, when we make contact with other universes, like you see in Star Trek, Star Wars. So the question is, what kind of Buddhism will they follow? Will Buddhism be relevant to them, for example? So we can ask that interesting question. Of course, we do not know whether this will happen or how this will happen, but the trajectory we are doing now, going to outer space, sooner or later we will meet such beings, right? Long ago, the locals thought that that's all, we are the only ones, and so when the first Europeans came, we were shocked. Said, wow, how come they got white beard? And they were called white Bengalis, And the Europeans were taught that Asians and Africans are subhuman and not really human. They were some strange aberration, and so we were treated that way. See? So we will discover a new life in time. Then again, we do not know. There could be other superior intelligence watching us, for example. Because the Buddha talks about gods and devas, heavenly beings. Of course, you can believe literally there are these kind of gods existing, but what kind of beings are they? We do not know. Could they be future aliens? So the Buddha understood the nature of the extent of the universe, and he's using the terminology of those days. So the people of those days understood. Imagine those days the people believed the world was flat. It was a disc, but the Buddha never mentioned the world was flat. He just kind of went on talking about various beings. It's the people who thought, who believed the world was flat.
Do you think that Western Buddhism is diluted? Or?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that Westerners are really imaginative, creative, and, for example, I know of Zen people in America who call themselves monks, but they're married, having wives and children. So they use the word Sangha in rather free way, which is totally different from the way it's used in early Buddhism. So if you take the kind of approach, Buddhism can be diluted. And yet there are, for example, another group, like the Bar Center of Buddhist Studies, they're very close to early Buddhism. They want to know, what did the Buddha teach? And they want that. So you have these two streams. Right? So I would say the chances of Buddhism surviving in the West is much more than over here. Because here we tend to follow the West. And then again, we are very ritualistic, traditional, we are very teacher-based, so that creates a lot of problems. Because early Buddhism, although it stress on the teacher, but it's not teacher-based. Even Sariputta, the wisest of the monks, and Chitta, the wisest of the laymen, they say things like, it is not through faith in the teacher that we attain all these high states. Not through faith in the teacher. And that misled a lot of people. They thought, they don't have faith in the Buddha. On the contrary, what they meant was, they realized all this high state, even awakening, through their own practice. And then after that, they had faith in the Buddha. In other words, it's faith based on wisdom. So you have that kind of talk, isn't it? All right? Any other questions? Yeah.
Now that, it's inevitable that religion will evolve, and from what early Buddhism taught all the way until now, 2,500 years later, there are many different schools.
True, yeah.
So for, let's say, people who are keen to practice, how do we know which teacher to follow, which teacher to follow, which teaching?
Yes. Yeah, this is a very important question. That is why we have the suttas, how are you going to know authentic teachers from not so authentic teachers? You got to have some kind of scripture, or we call it canon, C-A-N-O-N, some kind of guidebook, How do you know the doctors are practicing properly? You have some kind of guide, right? So we have that in the Tripitaka, in the Pali canon. So my approach now is to encourage people, especially if you are able to read, to study the suttas as much as possible, especially the suttas teaching on moral virtue and meditation. Once you understand the sutta, they're not difficult to understand, and there's so many commentaries nowadays, modern commentaries. Now once you understand this, for example, the Buddha talks about in meditation, why letting go of the body is important, and then you understand, like, letting go of the body, you're celibate. Why do you need to be celibate during meditation? Because then you're focusing your energy. It has nothing to do with sex is bad or women are bad. It's not like that. The suttas describe the nature of the mind, how it develops to attain higher levels. So once you understand some basic of this kind of teaching, then when you listen to those teachers, you have a good idea what kind of angle they are taking. Some they might themselves tell you the suttas. So that's how you choose them. Second way is you practice with them, and then you find, does the method work with you or not? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel joyful? These two things are very important. Joy and peace, because without joy you can never progress in meditation. You're not happy, you won't be able to do well. So the simple answer is you got to know the basics first. Otherwise you have nothing to authenticate the teachers. And you must be willing to challenge the teacher, ask the teacher. If he gets upset, too bad. It's not, he's not calm enough, So you question the teacher, then he will kind of, from his feedback, you begin to understand better his own level of understanding, and then it goes from there like that. So you have this kind of early. That is why you still have the forest monks today who actually live in the forest. There are also forest monks, but they're very modernized, and they collect money, things like that. So they are very different. So you got to go back to those early teachers. However, if you can still remain a layman, you study those methods you have learned, you come back and teach as a layman, then you are more free. I'm a full-time lay Dharma teacher, so I don't have to keep the rules that the monks keep, so I have more latitude, I have more freedom of expression, I can talk about anything to you. But you can't go to a monk and ask marriage questions, for example. It's a lose-lose situation. First, the monk will say, I can't help you, I don't know anything about this. Or worse than that, he says, let me tell you all the secrets. And they say, oh, how did you know this, So, the life of a monk is limited in that sense, because his aim is to attain that goal in this life and to show you this is calmness. He is the living advertisement of the Buddha's teaching. And there are many stories of this where the monks, they convert others by their silent presence. This is the amazing thing about Buddhist mission, You have the story of Sariputta, how he converted. He saw this Asaji walking very peacefully, and he was amazed. Oh, this monk is so peaceful. He must be very advanced. So he went up to him and asked him. There was no evangelizing thing, you see. So that's the purpose of the monk and the teacher. So you can work as a layman or you can work as a monk. So you can't combine the two. Then it's neither fish nor fowl. Then you have problems, all right? And of course, you can still be a professional doctor, and you can still teach Dharma, but you must go back to the suttas, okay? Because there was a time when people thought the moment you have a title, any kind of doctor, PhD, philosophy, you know Buddhism. I mean, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean that I come to a hospital means I know medicine, It doesn't work that way, see? So you have to go back to the suttas in that sense. You got to know what you're talking about, and you have references. Right, like what the professor would say, references, right? So in Buddhism too, we need citations. What did the Buddha say? Did he really say it? What does he mean when he says that? That is the meditation aspect. What does he mean? You have the textual aspect, the words, very easy to understand. Scholars can write a lot of things about it. But the experiential aspect, the meditation aspect is yours alone. And that's what you need. For example, now after 50 years of studying Buddhism, when I look at the sutta, I say, wow, this is the meaning now. It was very different from what I understood 30 years ago. So you must be ready to keep on changing your mind. So a Buddhist cannot hold views too long. You must be ready to change those views, provisional views. Not to say no views, you're an arahat, But you hold on to the views you understand now. Like, even right now, we have this certain medical knowledge. Then in the future, you find there are new discoveries, and then things change. So to Buddhism. Okay? Anything else? Next one, yeah. No, not yet, okay.
How do you know which suttas you can rely on?
You start anywhere. Suttas are quite, what shall we say? Start with something you can understand, right? If you follow the Sutta Discovery series, there are lots of footnotes and cross-references. So I call it the pathway or the reference method. So you don't have to read the sutta from beginning to end. You just take one that you like, and then you read, and then there comes a big word, and the footnote says, look elsewhere for this meaning of this. So you follow like that, and then you find your understanding builds up through the footnotes and so on, and there are cross-references. So from there, you have a kind of cross-section of the suttas. You begin to have a better idea. Some translations are bad, some even wrong. So again, they are translations. There is an Italian saying which goes, traduttore, traditore. The translator is a traitor. Because whenever you translate something, it's something else. But we don't know Pali, so we have to read in English, right? We have no choice, but sooner or later you got to go back to the Pali. So the Sutta Discovery series also gives you Pali words, and then you compare. So slowly your Pali also will... they're just terms, you get used to them. Just like your medical doctors, it's so convenient to use a technical term at once, your colleague knows what you're talking about. So you have those kind of terms in the suttas also, but then you got to know what they mean first, is it? So that's where your study, your references, cross-references will enrich that definition. Otherwise, it's just a word in your mind. For example, I went to see this physiotherapist. He's a professor. He was telling the students, say, hey, okay, try to tell me what is this symptom, and then this person came up with something, said, no, it is something else. Then he gave this name of some doctor in the future, and I told myself, he got the spelling wrong. He's a professor, but I did not tell him, because if I told you, how do you know, you see? Because I read somewhere, but it's just a spelling of a word. So although I may know this word, but I do not know what this professor knows, You see what I mean? So just because you know, you know the word Abhidharma, or you know the word metta, doesn't mean you're an expert in it. You have to work on it. They are just words. You've got to go deeper into it. What does it mean? Like I'm telling you about Buddhism now. So this is something very important we cannot take for granted. You have to do your homework and your legwork. You cannot rely on someone else's learning and wisdom. That is his. So in that sense, we walk the path alone, but we walk with others. So that's the wonderful thing, is it? But you walk alone, right? Sometimes faster, sometimes slower at your pace, but there are others with you. Okay? Now, I'm not talking too long so that you can ask questions, right? Yes?
So, let's say both the Theravadas will think that the suttas originate from the Buddha and then the Mahayanas, and same thing for the Tibetans as well. But they all say slightly different things. How do we know as in which one is the
Happily, most of the other schools now, they understand better the hierarchy, the historical sequence of the suttas. Unless they are really foolish enough to claim, because there are so many scholars now who will say they are wrong. The scholars can tell you the sequence, which are the early ones, which are the late ones. Now, I'm not saying we should remove all the other late Buddhism, purify the whole system, It's like our spiritual genocide. No, we don't need to do that. I mean, they're free to do what they like, I mean, we can't stop them, we shouldn't stop them. But the important thing is the test of the pudding. If they know it is wrong, they should give it up. Then we have done our task well. So you can compare notes, you can have inter-Buddhist or intra-Buddhist dialogue. The Buddhists got to talk to each other. We talk too much with other religions, but we don't talk to each other. So they have to follow certain local tradition because of their country, their culture. Of course, we can't stop that. But they must be based on a core, which goes back to the same roots. So and as long as you have that, then we can talk to each other, and that helps a lot. You understand what I mean? In other words, we're able to discuss some common terms because we all do share those common terms. But there are other extra things. For example, we don't have to talk about all those cosmic bodhisattvas, about Kuan Yin and Manjushri and so on, because Avalokitesvara is the embodiment of compassion, so we talk about compassion, rather than Avalokitesvara. So that is the Mahayana school's right, if you like. So we discuss things which are common, and then we begin to understand why the ideas evolve, and then we can explain those ideas like Kuan Yin better. Like even in my house now, although I don't even call myself Theravada, I follow early Buddhism, I still have a Kuan Yin image there, because I said, so what's wrong? To me, it's compassion. Moreover, someone gave it to me. I thought it's quite a nice image. So these are symbols. So the important thing is, what is it that we accept, we understand, and we can share with each other, and make sure whatever you do or follow, you are able to explain it clearly to your followers so that they practice it. And then from there, they come closer to what the Buddha taught without giving up their culture. So it's possible. So I'm not saying that we should be, we're so purist that we should give up other traditions. It's a choice you must make. What is it you want to follow? And Buddhists are given the wonderful free choice, so we should use it. This is all I'm saying.
I just want to raise up an example, because in some schools of Mahayana Buddhism, it's either they feel or they think, I'm sorry, I don't have much study in the Mahayana side of things. But I feel that, or they think that like after a person dies, there's this intermediate state.
Oh, okay.
Whereby the soul hangs around the body.
Okay.
And that's what the early Buddhists.
As far as I understand, early Buddhism and even Theravada Buddhists today, they accept the intermediate state because it's very difficult for a normal person to be reborn immediately. You got to be a saint. I mean, if your mind is really pure, then you're reborn immediately. So both are possible, you see. But for most of us who have lots of craving and fear, attachment, we still want, the consciousness wants to hold on to the old place, so we are stuck there, so to speak. We don't move on, you know. So it does happen. So that's kind of intermediate state. You have a disembodied consciousness. That's as far as we can agree.
But the consciousness has to take an object. So what?
So yes, the consciousness is only fundamentally aware of what's going on. Sensations, fear, usually.
It's still in the body.
No. It's disembodied. It's kind of floating around, if you like.
So it's Preta.
Preta is one aspect.
So that's an immediate rebirth as
No. They do not normally say Preta. Yeah, this is one of those problems, you know. The Pretas seem to be a light intermediate state, but they are not really. They are regarded as kind of like a being by themselves. So this is where you get a little bit of confusion sometimes, you know, who these Pretas are. The intermediate state is more like a consciousness that has not taken a actual new rebirth. It's kind of neither this nor that. Not even pure consciousness, because a lot of craving there. The Buddha says this kind of consciousness is propelled by craving, because they do not want to move on. They do not want to let go of the current stage. It's like you're in a dream, you know. You still want to hold on to what's going on here. So you don't want to move on. You don't want to wake up. You're caught in this dream. You see.
in your dream, you're still alive.
Yeah, I know. That's why I say like. See, yeah, because it's very difficult to talk about these things. So in a sense, it's very theoretical. You know, how to prove this, because we can't show it, we can't experience it.
Yeah, but it's important because it influences like how we treat people or
Yeah, this is the period also. For me, the most important thing for your deceased ancestors is to remember them with loving kindness. When you go for Qingming and all this, you know, so you go there. You can do it anyway, even at home, you know. Right? I mean, sometimes you do not know where your ancestors are, where they're buried. So you can do it anywhere. Of course, it's very nice to go to a particular place where they are entombed or what. You clean the grave. Originally, it was the idea of cleaning the grave. It's called grave cleaning festival. So you go there, you kind of do this wonderful loving kindness. You say, okay, wherever you are, a dad or grandpa, may you be well and happy. This is the proper way of doing it, you see. So we can do that. And we dedicate merits to them. We wish them well and happy. So if they are pretas, or if they are in the intermediate state, you send this joy to them, and they're able to sense you are there. Say, oh, look at that, my son or my grandson is there, and they're saying nice things to me. And joy arises in them. Because they cannot have joy. So they're in that suffering, very depressed state, if you like. So once they feel this joy, they drop from that state. They are no more that kind of being. They are reborn. So that frees them, non-attachment. So what we do is we help them to let go. There's a movie series on this, you know, Ghost Whisperer, where this Ghost Whisperer teaches this ghost and let go. That's the usual word they use. I think they got some Buddhist influence there. So through your mind, you try to somehow we have this. We send out this kind of feeling which they can sense. Animals can sense this very well. You know, they can sense you can be nice to them. They come to you. So that's how we kind of pray for them, if you like, to use the word loosely. Is that clear enough for you?
Yes. But following up with that question, because we are all going to die anyway, at some point.
Okay.
So does everybody who dies go through this intermediate state, or?
No. It depends. If you are very calm, you're a deep meditator, so you probably will be reborn immediately somewhere else. Another thing I didn't mention just now is most of our ancestors probably are already reborn elsewhere. So the prayer is just because we're not sure whether they are still here or not. They could be reborn elsewhere as human beings or some higher beings, we do not know. Or they could be reborn as the cat and they come back to your house, So it's very important to show loving kindness to animals too, because they are somehow connected with us, The Buddha said we've been reborn so many times. All of us are somehow related to each other through these countless millions of rebirths. So we don't go through the intermediate state all the time, but I would say most people who are not mentally trained would take a bit longer. There's no fixed time. 49 days is just a symbolic number. In fact, if you study carefully, these numbers are mentioned in the Abhidhamma Kosha. The numbers keep changing. So you notice they're not sure. Yeah, so there's no fix. Numbers in the Buddhist texts are notoriously symbolic. Except, of course, things like Eightfold Path, or it's 8. But then, they say there are 8 million beings listening to the Buddha, so that's a lot, So apparently I noticed the Indians start to add some extra 8 digits or 6 digits, So you shorten a bit and you get a better figure there, right? Because the idea is many, you see. Okay? Yeah.
You're mentioning the Abhidhamma Kosha, that's a Theravada?
No, that is... it's pre-Mahayana, early Mahayana, if you like, early Mahayana texts. They do quote the early suttas also, but it's not really Mahayana.
I don't recall seeing in the early suttas any part which
About?
is about this intermediate.
Yeah. The Buddha mentioned one of the suttas. It says when a person dies, but it's not reborn in any new state, then the consciousness is propelled by craving.
Sorry?
Propelled by craving. If you want readings, you email me, I will send you the readings. I have written a paper on that, because it's quite a common question. Okay? My address is at the bottom of this page. You see dhammafara.org, and the other emails are all given at the back of the book and so on. So you can take one of these books. Okay? Just a quick advertisement, all right? Now, this book, The Miraculous Life of Gautama Buddha, is a study in the psychology of mythology of the historical Bodhisattva. So this is the stories of the Buddha from the time he was born until he became Buddha. All those miraculous stories, he walked 7 steps. So how do we interpret this in modern times? All right? So this is the book. Now, this one everything is on Eightfold Path here. It's a kind of monograph on Eightfold Path. That you want details, everything is here. And this is an easy reading book on a few suttas on how to be happy here and hereafter. All right? It's for beginners. Sigalovada Sutta also here. So these are free books. They are available there. If this is finished, we can get some more from us. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure. All right, sadhu.